When Jonathan Antoine first opened his mouth to sing, time seemed to stop. At just 17, he stood trembling on a stage where millions were waiting to judge him. The world expected nothing, yet what they heard was compared to Pavarotti himself. But behind the breathtaking voice was a childhood marked by cruelty, loneliness, and a secret that would only come to light decades later. His rise to fame looked like a fairy tale, yet the truth was filled with heartbreak, struggle, and the long fight to understand who he really was. A childhood in shadows. Jonathan Antoine was born on January 13, 1995, in Chigwell, Essex, to John, a police inspector, and Tracy, a homemaker. Outwardly, it looked like a comfortable upbringing, but inside, his early years were defined by pain. By the age of 4, Jonathan had already become a target for bullies. His weight made him stand out, and children were merciless. Food was thrown at him in the school cafeteria, and teachers often found him crying alone. What looked like a simple case of childhood teasing ran deeper. Doctors would later describe his condition as trauma-induced hyperphagia, a disorder seen in only a small percentage of bullied children, where the cycle of ridicule and emotional eating led to extreme weight gain. By the age of 5, he was already 40 pounds overweight, and at 6, his weight had doubled what it should have been. Yet even during these years of torment, something remarkable was happening. Jonathan showed signs of a rare gift. By 6, he demonstrated perfect pitch, something so uncommon it appears in only about 1 in 10,000 people. He could hear a piece of music once and reproduce it flawlessly, remembering entire operas note for note. His mother, Julie, recalled how he would hum long melodies just to calm himself after a day of abuse at school, and in those moments he was not just escaping, he was composing. Even when depression took hold by the age of 8, his brain seemed wired for music in extraordinary ways. Experts would later call it a form of musical savant syndrome. The turning point came when Jonathan was 10 years old. During a routine choir audition with a substitute teacher named Mrs. Williams, he reluctantly opened his mouth to sing. What poured out didn't sound like a child, it sounded like an adult tenor. Mrs. Williams later compared it to Pavarotti trapped in a child's body. Analysis of recordings would show that his voice had natural vibrato, a technique that usually takes decades to master. Within weeks, he was performing adult solos without microphones, his voice strong enough to fill a 2,000-seat hall. For a boy who felt invisible, suddenly he was impossible to ignore. The festival breakthrough and Royal Academy years. By the time Jonathan turned 13, his voice had broken, but instead of losing his gift, it grew stronger. His teacher at West Hatch High School, Jenny Ewington, recognized this transformation immediately. She selected Bring Him Home from Les Miserables for him to perform at the 2010 Stratford and East London Music Festival. On that stage, against dozens of competitors, Jonathan sang with a depth that no one expected from a teenager. When the judges announced him as Young Musician of the Year, it was more than a title. It was validation after years of ridicule. For the first time, Jonathan felt cheered instead of mocked. Just a year later, in 2011, another milestone arrived. He was invited to sing Ave Maria at the Royal Festival Hall in London as part of the Rotary Youth Makes Music event. Performing on such a prestigious stage could have been overwhelming for a 14-year-old. But Jonathan's voice filled the hall effortlessly. It was a sign that he wasn't just a local prodigy. He was on a path that could take him to the world stage. At the same time, Jonathan made one of the most important decisions of his young life. After auditioning for the junior programs at the 4 major music conservatories in London, he was accepted by all of them. The choice was his. In the end, he selected the Royal Academy of Music, one of the most respected institutions in the world. The acceptance alone was remarkable. Out of thousands of applicants, only a handful were chosen, and Jonathan, still shy and uncertain, had impressed the judges with an almost flawless audition. Life at the academy was intense. Weekends were consumed with lessons. 6 hours of vocal technique, 4 hours of theory, and 2 hours of performance coaching. The other students at first ignored him because of his appearance, but his talent soon silenced any doubts. Within 3 months, he had been cast in the lead role of the Magic Flute, making him the youngest person ever to hold that position in the Academy's history. The partnership with Charlotte and Britain's Got Talent. In 2011, fate brought Jonathan into a partnership that would change his life. His high school music teacher, Jenny Ewington, paired him with a confident 16-year-old named Charlotte Giaconelli. Unlike Jonathan, Charlotte had been performing in musicals since childhood and loved the spotlight. Jenny's instinct was simple. Charlotte's stage presence could balance Jonathan's overwhelming but fragile voice. Their first duet was The Prayer, performed in front of a handful of classmates. Even in that small setting, the blend of Jonathan's rich tenor and Charlotte's soaring soprano was undeniable. The duo began performing at local events, churches, weddings, retirement homes, even pubs. They earned just £50 each for their first paid job, but audiences responded with tears and standing ovations. By early 2012, they were performing almost every weekend, building a small reputation in their community. It was Charlotte who pushed Jonathan to take the next step. She learned about auditions for Britain's Got Talent, but Jonathan resisted. The thought of standing on national television, open to ridicule for his size and appearance, terrified him. For 3 weeks, Charlotte begged. Finally, with just minutes left before the deadline, she submitted their application. When the pair walked onto the stage at the London Palladium in 2012, Jonathan was shaking. Simon Cowell, already skeptical, muttered a cruel remark to fellow judge Carmen Electra before Jonathan had even sung a note. But the moment he opened his mouth, everything changed. Their rendition of the prayer stunned the judges and audience alike. Simon's jaw dropped, and by the end, all 4 judges were on their feet. Cowell compared Jonathan to Luciano Pavarotti and declared him a future star. The audition clip went viral almost immediately. Uploaded on March 24, 2012, it amassed millions of views within weeks and became the most watched audition in the world that year. Headlines compared Jonathan to Susan Boyle, another unexpected star from the same show. For Jonathan, who had spent years hiding in the shadows, the sudden shift was overwhelming. Overnight, he went from a bullied teenager to a household name. Record deals, albums, and the split. Coming second on Britain's Got Talent might have crushed another teenager, but for Jonathan and Charlotte, it became the beginning of something bigger. The very next day after the final in May 2012, Simon Cowell confirmed he was offering them a £1 million record deal with his label Psycho. It was an extraordinary contract for 2 high school students who had never imagined such a future. That September, their debut album, Together, was released in the UK, reaching the top 10 on the albums chart before launching in the United States a month later. The record featured the songs that had made them famous, The Prayer and Caruso, alongside classical pieces and crossover tracks designed to reach both opera lovers and mainstream audiences. The success was immediate. Together sold over 250,000 copies, an achievement few winners of the show had ever matched. The duo toured, performed on television, and built a loyal fan base across the UK. Simon carefully timed their media appearances to maximize exposure, pairing the album's release with the height of the X Factor season. For Jonathan, still struggling with his self-image, the sudden attention was both thrilling and terrifying. Their second album, Perhaps Love, arrived in October 2013 under Sony Classical after the duo shifted labels. This record leaned further into crossover territory, blending modern interpretations with classical foundations. Reviews were positive, and the album reached number 5 on the UK charts. Yet behind the polished photo shoots and smiling interviews, tensions were growing. Jonathan's heart remained with opera and classical tradition, while Charlotte leaned toward musical theater and more contemporary styles. The differences came to a head in early 2014. Meetings with Sony over a possible third album dissolved into disagreements over song choices and artistic direction. Insiders revealed that the two could no longer agree on what their music should sound like. Touring had also taken its toll on Jonathan's fragile health, amplifying his anxiety and self-doubt. In February 2014, the announcement came. Jonathan and Charlotte would split. Jonathan's solo breakthrough and international career. The split from Charlotte in 2014 was bittersweet, but it opened the door to Jonathan's solo career. He was just 19 when he stepped onto the stage at the iTunes Festival, invited personally by the legendary Placido Domingo. For Jonathan, who had grown up listening to the great tenors, it was an almost surreal honor. Only months earlier, he had been terrified to perform without Charlotte at his side. Now, he was standing next to one of his idols, finally proving that his voice could hold its own. Later that year, Jonathan released his debut solo album, Tenore. Produced by Anna Berry, known for her work with Andrea Bocelli and Jose Carreras, the record was a statement. Jonathan was no longer the shy teenager from a TV talent show. He was a serious classical artist. The album climbed to the top of the Classical Artist Albums chart and even reached number 13 on the UK pop chart. Critics praised his velvety tone and vocal maturity, calling him a new star on the vocal scene. For Jonathan, the success was more than professional validation. It was proof to himself that he could survive without the safety net of a duo. The momentum carried him across the Atlantic. In 2014, he appeared at the Muhammad Ali Celebrity Fight Night in the United States, performing in Arizona, California, and Florida. These events connected him with American audiences and placed him alongside celebrities from across the entertainment world. Over the next few years, he continued to build his reputation with live performances, but the release of his second solo album cemented his place in the industry. In August 2016, Jonathan unveiled Believe, a collection that showcased his versatility. Alongside Puccini arias and classical standards, he offered a heartfelt rendition of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah and original music, co-written with British composer Chris Broom. One track, A New Tomorrow, carried an especially personal meaning, reflecting Jonathan's struggles and hopes for the future. The album received glowing reviews, with critics noting his ability to move effortlessly between powerful operatic passages and gentle emotional phrasing. By 2018, Jonathan was ready to take another leap. He performed his first full solo concert in the United States at the Fred Kavli Theater in California. The following year, in 2019, he took the stage at the Winter Garden Theater in Canada for a special three-part concert, Beyond the Curtain. There, he sang everything from Disney classics to Nessun Dorma, the aria that had defined Pavarotti. It was the first time Jonathan had performed it publicly, a symbolic moment marking his evolution from a nervous teenager to a commanding tenor. Health battles, autism diagnosis, and a new chapter. As Jonathan's career grew, so too did the weight of expectation. By 2020, he was ready for his boldest project yet. That June, he released Going the Distance, a concept album recorded with the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and produced by Grammy winner Greg Field. The record was divided into 3 acts, a symbolic reflection of Jonathan's own journey. For the first time, he performed Nessun Dorma on a studio album, embracing the aria that had once seemed untouchable. To cap it off, PBS aired a full concert special with choir and orchestra, showcasing Jonathan not as a former talent show contestant, but as a world-class tenor. Yet his health remained a constant struggle. Jonathan had battled obesity since childhood, and while he had lost weight after joining Weight Watchers in 2013, he often slipped back under the pressures of touring and fame. By his own admission, American tours made things worse. Fast food was everywhere. Discipline was scarce. But in recent years, he found a routine that changed his life. Beginning in January 2022, Jonathan committed to walking 10,000 steps a day, no matter where he was. Even if it meant pacing in one room for an hour, he refused to miss the target. The consistency transformed his energy. "I feel stronger and healthier than I have in 10 years, he admitted, a declaration that echoed how long he had carried the burden. Then, in early 2023, Jonathan revealed something he had kept private. He had been diagnosed with autism shortly after his 27th birthday in 2022. The announcement came during an interview in Australia and was later shared in a heartfelt post for World Autism Awareness Day. He described the diagnosis as like falling into a daydream, a recontextualization of an entire life. Suddenly, his struggles with anxiety, social withdrawal, and emotional overwhelm had an explanation. His words resonated with thousands. "We all get our own little matrix hidden just behind our eyes." It's good practice to try and imagine just what kind of lens someone else is viewing the world through. For Jonathan, speaking about autism was not only personal, it was advocacy. He began using his platform to promote awareness, compassion, and kindness. By 2024, Jonathan showed no signs of slowing down. He released By Request, the Diane Warren Songbook Volume 1, collaborating with one of pop music's greatest writers, whose songs had been sung by Celine Dion, Aerosmith, and Lady Gaga. At 29, Jonathan Antoine was no longer the shy boy who once shook on the Britain's Got Talent stage. He had become an artist in his own right, shaped by tragedy, resilience, and discovery. But perhaps his greatest achievement was not the albums or the standing ovations. It was learning to seize control of his own life and to finally embrace who he truly was. Jonathan Antoine's story is one of triumph through pain, of music rising from years of silence and cruelty. From a bullied child in Essex to a tenor recognized around the world, his journey shows that fame never tells the full story. Now that you've heard his path, what part of Jonathan's life touched you the most? His early struggles, his rise to fame, or his resilience after the autism diagnosis? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories of the people you thought you knew.